we are currently sat in a music production studio in the Baltic Triangle in Liverpool.
And we're in the cabin with Alec Brits.
Welcome.
Well, before we start, how would you describe yourself?
Yes.
How would I describe myself?
You said you're a music producer, you run the cabin, but what else do we need to know?
A Liverpool legend.
Liverpool legend was definitely a stretch, but I'll take it.
It's Steven Gerrard, Cilla Black, the Beatles. Wow.
In first year, I was in 11 bands, which sounds like a stupid amount, but I was gigging every night.
Can't
Like
even manage one.
ChatGPT doesn't have any issues with confidence or imposter syndrome. So I've had moments where I've written something in here and I've shelved it, and I've gone, I will never hear that again.
I'm gonna sing this. I was on the beach the other day in Turkey and I started crying when I heard this. But it's not a sad song. I just randomly cry off music all the time. I feel like I've got some demons I'm not dealing with. And it goes, some things I can't get used to, no matter how I try. Oh, babe, what kind of love is this that you're giving me? Is it in your kiss or just because I'm free? You're all I want. I hear the change. I feel love, man. Don't know the words. I feel the same. Do what you got to do, my darling. I can't get enough of your love. Welcome.
Welcome to the Empty Space in Between.
We're back.
Podcast.
I always single. It's meant to be
Amazing.
like the most awkward intro ever.
I love the idea of like him singing songs that nobody's ever heard.
And that as well.
That's Barry White, man. That's a classic.
No.
No, I got it at the
I got
end.
it, yeah, got it towards the chorus.
I got it when you sung the bit everyone knew.
Yeah.
And the other one, and he does, let the music play on. Just until I feel this
You were crying at
misery
Barry
has
White.
gone. Barry White, let the music play, lads. In the line, he says, just let the music play on, just until I feel this misery is gone. And it's just like, I felt like someone was desperate, like, I just want you to carry on playing this until I feel a bit happier. I was on the beach and I was with my girlfriend and I just went like, I'm not even messing down, I'm crying. I had a few cocktails, like.
That's fair enough.
There's the explanation.
But we're on a different gas.
I was about to say, for those who are astute and actually watch. We are currently sat in a music production studio in the heart, well, I was about to say the heart of Liverpool, but it's just outside, in the Baltic Triangle in Liverpool.
And we're in the cabin with Alec Brits.
Welcome.
We always do celebrations, lads, yeah.
Appreciate
and the very
that.
first guest we had on, we never
We
celebrated.
never celebrated.
So every guest since,
Just
we
quiet.
celebrate. And like someone we had, I think it was Anya on, and she was like, you didn't celebrate on Dr. Ian Malabar's, did you?
Like,
We were like,
oh yeah.
Well, we're Alec Brits, man, producer, Liverpool legend in the music scene. He runs the cabin in the Baltic Triangle, Cabin Studios, and yeah, how are you, all?
Good, thank you guys so much for having me on the
Thanks for
podcast.
coming on. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely buzzing.
We normally have researchers. We're obviously a science podcast, but as we said at the very start, when we started the
When we
podcast,
put out our manifesto, that makes it seem very different.
yeah, when we
to
put
what it
out
is.
what we want to change in the world, we
Yeah.
said it's a science podcast, but we want people who are interested in research, interested in machine learning, AI, how they might be implementing it in their worlds, whatever that world be, whatever that application would be, music, architecture, design, whatever.
Yeah.
And we've got a guy in, Alec Brits, who uses some of these
doing that.
tools. Where do we always start, Belly?
Well,
Before
with
we
our
get
guests.
into this person, where do we
So what
always
we like
start?
to do is when we have guests on, we like to break the ice and get to know them a bit better before we get into the questions.
I would have
So
thought
we-
it was warm enough in here.
It's very warm.
I
The
want
ice is
to ask Al as well before we start. How would you describe yourself?
yes,
How would I describe
Well,
myself?
you said you're a music producer, you run the cabin, but what else do we need to know?
a Liverpool legend.
Liverpool legend was definitely a stretch, but I'll take it.
It's Steven Gerrard, Cilla Black, the Beatles. Wow.
Yeah, definitely a record producer, songwriter, and more recent career changes involve me being a content creator and a product reviewer, beta tester, and developer. I run a YouTube channel where the
Oh, the voice cracks already
I know,
started.
Sorry, I have been singing all day today, so that's gonna happen a lot. The USP for my YouTube channel is the fact that I write a song for every video, and
Shit.
that's it. So at the time of filming, there's 53 episodes and 51 songs.
Did I not tell you that?
No, I don't think you did.
Sorry,
No.
lad.
Yeah.
No,
When I described Al, I said you got a YouTube and you review products, but
Yeah.
I forgot to say you do a song for every product.
Yeah, that's so sick though.
Yeah, it's
Like,
pretty cool.
'cause that must take like me. I think as a lot of people always do when they're younger, they go, "Oh, I'd love to write a song,"
Yeah.
and then they try it, and it's just like, no.
Yeah, like you're speaking to a song
No, but
machine.
that's what I'm
man.
trying to say. Like that's very, very impressive. Like 51 different songs.
It's
to-
a lot.
That's
It's a
what I'm
lot.
saying.
What I
It's,
will say is that those 49 out of the 51 are verse, pre-chorus, chorus, and bridges, so they're not the full thing.
right.
But the last 3 are, and
Full
that's
tunes.
been really cool to
Sick.
kind of get into.
Because lads, when I've come in the studio before, because obviously I'm in only Motel, I've told Daffy I don't want to beat it home anymore. Get on us.
No, keep saying.
We record with Al, and like before we start, he always just goes, "Like, I've got this little tune here that's like on a video I'm doing, and it'll be a sick tune." And he's just gonna put it on a video and like to review a product, and most people are just gonna watch it for the product. Like, you're throwing the tunes away.
I'm not
Well,
throwing anything away.
No,
They are what I call public voice notes. You know, so from July 23rd, I'll be releasing a single every 6 weeks until I stop doing that, which is gonna be pretty cool.
For
I think.
50 goes round.
I don't think I'll be doing it for 50 weeks. That's 300 weeks. Is my maths right there?
Yeah, but you
300
got 50
weeks.
tunes, though you're not doing them all, though.
No. Some of them are pretty bad now.
Oh, sweet.
Because
okay.
obviously, like once you start, you get better at stuff. And like
Yeah.
I listen to some of the earlier things, and I'm like, did
I
you
can
have
dare
ears?
forward you.
Yeah. Are you sure about this?
The chorus is, "I love you, don't leave me."
Yeah. 4 times.
And then the verse is, "I love you, please stay,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
don't
yeah.
leave me."
If it's all right with you, I would like you to not go.
But where do we always start?
That's what I
Like,
say,
come
yeah.
on.
So the icebreaker questions, as we say, we ask 3 questions just to break us in. Let's get the conversation flowing. So the first question is, what is your favourite sandwich? Left
Ultimate
field.
Sarnie, lads.
Ultimate
We need to
Sarnie.
get to the core of Val before we get going on any
Yeah.
combos.
Tough
We will
because
rank
there's different categories, right? There is the public sandwich, the one that you buy from a shop, which is fine. Which in this country, that for me is a bacon and sausage with red or bacon with brown. Fine, never disappointed in those.
More like a cob
No, just
toast.
like
on toast.
toast, man,
Yeah.
toast. Cob's good when you are hungover.
Yeah.
That's
a
about
lot going on there in it to,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
soak it all up.
enough time as well to eat and really question your life choices, which is good. And then you have the greasy face to look at yourself
And the
while you
salty
cry.
bits for hours afterwards.
So good,
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
that. Then there is the home sandwich category. That's a different beast altogether because whatever sandwich I make at home is nothing near as good as what my mom can make. It doesn't matter. We can have exactly the same ingredients. Somehow she makes a sandwich
It's
that's
always
just so
better.
much better. And like it always is like packed like hell. So in South Africa, we have these bread rolls that have got like cheese on top, and then it's like peronaise, some kind of cold meat, whatever it might be, cucumber. I'm drooling thinking about this. Cottage cheese, butter.
cheese, man.
Mate, cottage cheese on a sandwich is a
Nice,
knockout.
Hold
and I
on then.
forget that all
This
the
the first
time.
person who's broke sarnies down by fucking home bake and fucking store bought.
Because this is a man who understands the
The
sarnie.
sarnie, lads,
Understands
We've had
it
some
is-
shit sarnies.
That's
Okay,
so bad.
give us the ultimate though, lads. You
Yeah.
you can't pick two here.
Yeah, Saturday afternoon, mom sandwich. That's it.
And what is that? Say it again. Repeat.
All right, so we're on for this one specifically. We have these garlic sandwiches, these garlic rolls. So they put like garlic oil on top, and they put that in the oven and it crisps, which is insane.
Shit.
Then roast beef, peronaise, cucumbers, cottage cheese, mozzarella grated.
That's the best thing I've ever heard. I really want.
That sounds good, man.
That
What's
sounds-
it's the bread? So the bread's like hot and got
Yeah,
like
man.
an oil
Like it.
crisp.
Oh
It's
my
got like
God.
oily, like not like oily, but it's like a little sheen of oil as opposed to the egg wash on top. And it's like a little bit of crisp with the softest white bread inside,
Wow.
dude.
That's
It's
the
insane.
best.
That's good, isn't it?
So, second question. Sam always laughs the way I ask this. You're feeling a bit fancy. You want to host a dinner party.
Mm-hmm.
The standard question: 3 people, dead or alive. Who do you invite round?
Oof. Steve Jordan was the first name that came to mind. He's the guy who plays drums for the Rolling Stones currently. No, sorry, for The Who. He produced the John Mayer Continuum record and the Battle Studies record.
what an
I just love listening to him talk, and he's like my number one biggest inspiration musically. So it would be a disservice to not have him around the table.
Continuum with Gravity on, innit?
Yeah.
Okay, it's an album now.
Oh, it's tough, isn't it?
So you've got one music person.
Yeah.
You're gonna bin the music now and go to other areas.
Yeah, 100%. Because then the whole dinner would just turn into gear talk.
Yeah, it'd be annoying.
Oh, what do you
Lads, he
feel about
invited
that?
Jesus.
Jesus would be cool, but I think like there'd be a bit of a gap there. There's a bit of a knowledge gap.
Bit of a culture clash.
Depending on how you feel about Jesus, of course. The next person would likely be tough. Cleo Abrams. She runs a YouTube channel called is it Cool If True or Awesome If True? Something like that. Where it's basically a cutting edge technology channel.
All right.
So her last episode was on quantum computing.
Oh shit.
And it was her and Marques Brownlee like going together into this thing.
Right, yeah.
She did another one with like how they've created nuclear reactors that can use spent nuclear fuel, which is like amazing. But
She's like
outrageous.
a tech content creator.
Yeah,
You've mentioned there to me.
She's unbelievable,
Yeah.
man.
What's
But
her name again? Because I'm gonna watch. That's defo one for the listener.
Yeah.
I watch YouTube all the time.
just type in Cleo Abrams
Cleo Abrams.
on YouTube, and it will
Belter.
bend your brain, dude. She's amazing, and also the way that she edits and puts a story together, like. The best YouTube videos have like a 3-act structure.
Yeah.
And the way that she can weave that much information into that amount of time is insane. Obviously, she has got a team with her. But like, I would love to. And also the thought of her talking to Steve Jordan at the same time. I think my brain would. They would just like orange juice would just come out my ears. I think that's it. Which would be great. And then the last person, because I'm now thinking about the social aspect of those two and me, I think we can keep that going. I wouldn't want to put a stick in the
proper
works.
deep in it, lad. Everyone else is sick.
The last person, one of the Wright brothers.
Oh shit! Okay.
That'd be insane. Just saying to them, look, so you that's what you were doing,
Yeah.
and now literally we have a stealth bomber that looks like a boomerang, and like that's where we are now.
Can you imagine, man?
But who's the first guest?
Steve Jordan.
You're gonna go. Listen, I know you learned how to fly, but look at him shred on these drums.
No, but the thing is, like, I know, like, Steve is probably going to be a massive nerd about something.
Yeah.
Cleo is a giant nerd. Or one of the Wright brothers. Or even, like, the thought of putting, like, Henry Ford into a Tesla and just being like, hey, feel this. Like, that kind of thing where you have these three people being able to bounce off of the three main aspects of life. You have the culture, you have the science, and you have the optimistic, like, thing, plus me in the middle of all of this.
You know what, though? That's the most thought out guest table we've had.
So, last break the ice question is: what is the worst job you've ever had?
There's like two different answers to this. There's the long term, like, I wish I said no to this because it's changed me as a person for the worse, or there's the like monotonous kinds of jobs that I've done in the past. Some of the monotonous jobs I've done was unpacking and packing trucks again and again in my mom's factory. That was like one of the things. The other one was a job I thought I would really love, and for work placement, we got to work 7 days at a place of your choice. And strangely enough, there's a drum kit in this room there. And the place where I bought that kit when I was 16, this is winding the clock back to when I was 10, I wanted a job placement there because that's where all the cool stuff was.
The music shop.
Yeah, and I was like, this is going to be awesome.
So you've been proper into music since like
The age of 3, yeah. Kids would buy PlayStations and stuff. I'd buy snares. So I get this job, and I'm like, this is amazing. I'm basically going to be working in paradise for like 6 or 7 days.
Surrounded by gear.
Yeah. And I get there, and there's this guy called Gil Rejuveneri, and I was like looking up to this guy who's a salesman, and I was like, Gil, I'm ready to sell. And he's like, Alec, you're a child. You're not selling anything. What you will be doing for the next 6 or 7 days is building drum kits from scratch. So they get shipped from Japan in one box, and all the metal pieces are inside, and all the shells is like a birthday cake. And you have a screwdriver, and you have a drum key, and that's it.
So you were just locked in the back building kits?
Just building kits, man. By the end of that week, and now, like when this drum kit came from South Africa a few weeks ago, it's 3 days to polish every piece of metal, and I put it back together, and I was taken back to that moment of being like, I love drums so much, and it was such a huge part of my identity, to then, at the age of whatever it was, to be building them for 7 days was like, I never want to touch a drum kit ever again. It lasted for about 6 hours.
You turned up thinking like, I'm going to get to speak to customers. I'm going to be able to like, oh yeah, we've got these and like proper like test guitars out, and like you got put in the back building
drum kits.
That, just little baby out through the crack.
I want to be out there.
See some dude shredding on a guitar and he's going. You know what you mean? No, like building drum kits. I've been on like. And I enjoy building sites, but like there was some roles on it where it'd be like fill the skip.
Yeah.
And like the guys who will have ripped the rooms out will have just dumped their stuff on the floor because the skip wasn't there yet.
Oh, and there's such a specific way to build a skip.
And there'd be a mound of shit waiting for the young labour there.
Oh.
And I remember clearing a mound of shit like as big as this studio, me and my cousin Ben, and it took us days to do it. But like, you know, I know what you mean, like just always rinse and repeat where you're like...
Mate.
Takes it out, you've done it in the end, just mentally.
Because also you know that there's no end. Like even if I built, like I think I could do two or three kits a day, but there were like 40 in this room. So it's like it doesn't matter how hard you work. By the time you get to the end,
there's gonna
the
be
next shipment's coming.
Did you get bollocked as well?
No,
because there's always someone who's like you can build it perfect, and they go like, why have you put that on like that?
Yeah. I think Gil didn't care enough. I think he was like, there's this kid doing something that I'm not going to do.
So, taking it back then, so as you said, you've been into music for a young age. Then, what was that like in terms of like schooling? And that was music very much so we always like to, with our guests, go back to the start and then figure out how they got where they were. So was schooling, like, were you good at school? Were you not really bothered with, or was it like a bit of mixture of both in terms of music, academia, that
and
sort of
Al's
thing?
from, we said that a few times, but he's from South Africa, aren't you? So you were born there, so tell us what it was like growing up and what was you like in school?
Academically, I was shocking. And like as time has gone, I've realized that I've definitely got a form of ADD, definite dyslexia, as you and I have both discovered. Sam and I write songs together, and I can't spell things. I can say things real good, but I don't spell so nice.
All three of us.
But I could never concentrate in class, but I could play drums for 4 hours without even batting an eyelid.
Just because you like hyper focused on it and just enjoyed doing it.
That's it. Yeah, and it never felt like work. So I started playing drums apparently when I was 3. Obviously, I don't remember this. And by the time I was 7, I was playing in church with my dad. He was the worship leader in our church at the time. And then that was it. Bands until I was 13. Just passing school, like averaging like just about 50% across everything.
In all the subjects?
Yeah.
So other than music, you struggled?
There was no music classes in my first 2 schools that I went to. And then what I didn't realize was around the time I was 14, my brother left for university, and I think it was my first bout with depression, but in South Africa at that time, depression wasn't a thing. It wasn't like nobody spoke about depression or whatever. I was just a sad fat kid, and like my mom and dad, I didn't realize I was staying with my grandparents on some weekends, and what they were doing was traveling around the country looking for schools that had music programs, and they ended up finding one about an hour away from where we stayed, even though they went to further ones, called St. Albans, and it was a boarding school. And I only had the last 3 years of school. So in South Africa, it's grade 10, 11, and 12. You finish on your matric year, which is the 12th year, age 18. And I moved there, and it was all boys school. I had only ever lived at home. I was living as an only kid for the previous like 2 years, with my brother not being there. And I got dropped into this environment where there was a superstructure. And it was a boarding house, and everything worked in a specific way because that's how it worked, and there was no reason to deviate. This school is going to find what you're good at, and they're going to make sure you excel at that thing.
Was it just a music school, or was it like arts?
It was a full-on, like a normal high school that just had a really good music department.
So everything else. Right, doing everything.
Yeah. So everybody had to play 2 sports. That was the rule. So you had your summer sport, you had your winter sport. Everybody had to take part. Like, because all boys school, there was like teams 1 to 7. I was always like 3rd, 4th team, you know.
They were trying to wean out what you were good at.
Like, basically.
You get you to do everything. Yeah.
So I went for my audition at that school, and there's an incredible person who's now back there called Mark Stenhouse. And I didn't have any grades, but you needed certain grades to get into certain places. You should be at this level, at this age to do this thing. And we did the audition. He basically said, "Can you read any of this?" And I was like, "I can read the drum things, but I have no idea about music dots at all." And he took a gamble. He said, "Well, we'll let you in. You can clearly play." And I had already done like internships at studios at that point. I knew how to session play. I knew how to set up mics. I knew how to do everything else musically. My cousin ran a recording studio when I was growing up.
So you were always knocking about that.
Yeah.
Always, yeah.
Just being a job hand, basically, like
Always.
doing bits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew how to make serious coffees from the age of like 9, and I knew how to wind up a cable. You know how serious I am about cables, as we've discussed. That's been in me because my cousin was just on it from the beginning. But yeah, he basically took a gamble, and he said, by the end of your first year here, you need to be at grade 5, and then work your way through it from there. By the end of my first year, I finished grade 8, and as soon as he realized I was serious, he gave me the codes to the department, and he said,
Just go in.
whenever it's free time, whenever it's before bedtime and after homework hour, you're in here, you're working, and that's the deal. And he just absolutely rinsed me on everything, and he was fantastically supportive the whole way through. And then, because of how the school years run in South Africa, I had to audition early to get into LIPA, because in South Africa it's January to December, and obviously here it's September to June or whatever it is.
So how did you come to know about LIPA? Is it like, because obviously I know it, you know it because it's local.
Yeah.
To us, yeah. So how did that come on your radar as like a
absolute legend of a man called James Whitehouse, and he was 2 years above me in boarding school, and he loved the blues, and I hadn't really spent much time listening to the blues. And there was this guy who had a Marshall amplifier, and he would turn it up to hell, and he had a Strat, and
in this boarding school.
Yeah, and he was sick. Like, the guy could play, you know. And but I only had him for 1 year, and in that year we became a band. Like, we had a trio with his dad, who was an amazing bass player, and like he just basically hit me with the blues aggressively and all kinds of rock music. He was like, "Have you ever heard of Mute Math?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "What about the Foo Fighters?" And I was like, "My brother likes the Foo Fighters." He's like, "Yeah, but do you like the Foo Fighters?" And I was like, I don't know. And he just hit me with all this music, Cream,
Was he
the
banging on that
Stones.
all the old blues, kind of like B.B. King and Alan Wolf
all
and
of that stuff,
Yeah,
man. Like heavy. And I was like, this is everything I want. And then at that time, my cousin played John Mayer, and then Continuum came out that year. And I was like, okay, everything's changed forever now.
So he told you about LIPA?
Yeah, so then his mom went to uni in Liverpool, and then he applied to LIPA, got in, and then he came back for the summer holidays, which is the middle of our school year, and he walked into the music department, and he was like, "Dude, you need to come to LIPA. This is sick. Like, you're gonna love this place." My parents, being incredibly supportive, said, "Well, we'll send you there for a week when he goes back in September, and you can live with him for a week in Cambridge Court, the student accommodation."
You just slept in his little studio?
Dude, I slept in their living room, and they had those 2-seater couches. I remember falling asleep. It was also the first time I may have partaken of alcohol. I was totally over 18 at this time.
A week off school?
No. So I had my, during, I think it was the end of the summer, end of our winter holidays, which was like end of August, early September. And I came in, and James had arranged jam sessions with like these incredible musicians. And I didn't know he'd done this. And he's like, "Yeah, we've got a jam session today at this time. Oh, we're going to the Magnet to go watch this place. And like, we're going to go to Bumper and see this band." And like, we did all this stuff. So there was no way I wasn't going to go home fired up. Then I got an early audition to see if I could get in. My parents insisted that I also apply to South African universities. There was only one university in South Africa that I was interested in, which was the University of Cape Town, and I filled in the forms wrong on purpose. I didn't want to go.
Yeah.
So my dad took the forms to the post office. They weren't sealed yet, and he obviously read through them to make sure that they were all there. And he just drove home, and he's like, "What are you doing, man?" And I was like,
"Shit."
and I just said to him, "I'm not going.
yeah, like
There's one place I'm
I
going,
will LIPA.
you know." And at this point, I hadn't even auditioned, which was insane. But that's kind of how I do the thing. I very much live in the burn the ships mentality, you know, like, well, we're here now.
You didn't want to risk, I got what you're saying, you didn't want to risk like writing a good application and then like that like persuasion from your parents. You're like, well, you got into Cape Town, like
yeah,
you start
yeah.
opening them doors
Yeah.
for you in
Yeah.
your life.
That,
Oh,
Dilution doesn't work for me, as
Yeah.
as is very much part of my creative process. I believe in democracy in so many parts of my life, but when it comes to creativity or direction, take charge of what you want to do and just
Yeah,
do it.
so
That
I've
is
got my
okay to be a
vision,
dictator in that
and that
moment.
is happening.
Yeah. So I had an early audition. I got accepted before my last year of school, which was insane because of how the years went
shit,
over.
Yeah.
And I came back to St. Albans and I ran into the music department, like probably the fastest I'd ever moved at that point. And I went into the head of music's office and I was like, I've been accepted. And he was like, I know, they phoned me. And then he picked up his phone and he phoned all the sports coaches and he's like, Alec might not be coming to many more practices. And he put the phone down and he said, my boy, now you've got to work. And that was it. I just practiced every single day in, day out, day in, day out.
So how many months was it until you were going to Liverpool from when you found out?
18.
You had to wait 18 months?
18 months, dude.
Oh, because you got accepted that early.
I got accepted. I had to do the whole school year. My grades when I was in boarding school for the first 2 years went up by 30%. I realized that as soon as I didn't have the distraction and as soon as I had order in my life and a routine and the fact that homework was like just part of the thing, if you didn't know something, you went to your dorm mate next to you and you were like, do you know how this works? And then they were like, yes.
So like literature, maths, science, everything.
Everything went up
always
from like
find
45 to 75%.
Yeah, like you could always find someone to help,
That's it.
regardless of what
And
it
you
was.
had a homework hour?
Well, we had an hour and a half. I think it was from 7 till 8:30 every day. It was homework. And that was the time. So like it became completely normal. So of course your grades were going to go up. There was also not the distraction of a co-ed school. So I wasn't, most of my friends growing up, I've always been closer to females than to males most of my life. So then when that was taken away, there was no distraction. Everything was just kind of right down the middle. And then there was a disciplinary action that was in that place. So when the sun goes down, that boarding house is run by the final years. So if you do something wrong, the teachers might not find out about it.
Yeah.
But they know, and
Yeah.
you know, and the way that they dealt with things was very fast and very efficient, and they got the results they wanted, you know. And somehow it was like, as my dad would say, he was like a fish in water. He was lost before he came to the school, and then the school fixed him, you know. Mildly offensive, but also okay. And like,
Why is that offensive?
because I was broken. I went there. I think I was
Just
fine.
gone, before you came here, with no clue.
Yeah.
No idea.
But that sounds like what's happened, like by what you're saying, because I've known Al for a good few years now, but I didn't know like this.
Yeah.
What you're saying now. So you were like, and I had the same experience. Not I didn't get depressed, but I get like, when your brother leaves. My brother went to uni. When I was like, I don't know, he's like 5 years older than me. And it's weird, isn't it, when like they go, is it just you and your brother?
Yeah.
Same. And it once that like other sibling goes, you're on your bill.
It's
and
horrible,
it's weird,
man.
isn't it?
It's
It's
horrible.
like your mate is, especially as, I don't know about you, but like you fight when you're a kid at your sibling. But once
Yes.
you get to like 10, 12, you start becoming mates,
Yeah.
don't you?
Yeah,
And
we
it's
became
like-
close, man. We became close. And like closer and closer as well. But the cool thing is that this boarding school was in the same town as his university.
So you
Ah.
So
Right,
sometimes he would like swing by on a Friday and
Yeah,
I'd have that
yeah.
cool older brother who would like pick me up and I'd be going to his like
You're like,
shooting
that's your
place.
mate, my brother's coming.
Yeah, exactly.
He's 19.
I'd
You'll
be like-
smash all your heads in.
He definitely wouldn't do that. These are Blue Bulls rugby players, my friend. Nobody's gonna smash anybody's heads in here. But yeah, no, it was really cool. And then once that was all done, I came here. And again, fish and water. I was 18 years old. My parents were here when I came, and then they left. And I built IKEA furniture in my apartment and lived here. I was already in 2 bands because James was already here. So I think the second or third day I was here, I had my first rehearsal.
You were like
and
networked up already.
already, yeah. So James like hooked me up right away. And in first year, I was in 11 bands, which sounds like a stupid amount, but I was gigging every night.
Can't
like,
even manage one.
yeah. Well, there's about 11 bands worth of horsepower required to run your band.
11 bands, like, would they cover that all original? Like, that sounds like a lot.
I think 9 of them were originals. Like, this was the schedule for me. Like, I would have university from 9 till 3, 2 rehearsals, then a gig of some description that night. The gig would probably finish around 11:30. Then I'd be in the Liverpool studio from 12 till 4 a.m. Go home, sleep, get back into and then get back into uni the next day. So me and a guy called Craig Walsh, we did so many studio sessions that eventually I had to just leave my drum kit in the studio passageway. And the head of sound engineering at the time, John Thornton at Liverpool, said like, you can't leave your drums in the passageway. It's very unsightly. And I was like, but I'm going to use them tonight. He's like, but they were here yesterday. I was like, so was I. I was literally every night.
How'd you get in the studio in the middle of the night?
University studios run overnight because during the day is class. So then you book them, I think it's like from 8 till 6 or something, or 8 till 5, you know.
Yeah.
It's pretty intense.
So don't classes start at like midday?
Classes start at 9 a.m.
You just don't go, so you're just getting up knackered then? Yeah, shit.
It's like one of them minutes, so it's like in life you have eat. Well, no, is it sleep, work and play? You just fuck sleep off.
And somehow when you're like 18 to 21, that's okay, you know.
Like I find that now, like say doing my PhD, like when I was doing undergrad, I'd be like, right, I'll get up, I'll do 14, 15 hours in the library, go home, 3 hours kip, like go out, wake up pissed, do it again. Now
Walk in sloshed at 6 a.m.
Yeah, now I try and do work past 12 a.m. I'm like, my head's gone here, I can't do it. And if I don't have 8 hours kip, I'm like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
It's horrible, man. I've got like stupid hours during the day. Like for me, before like 9 is generally stupid hour time. So I'm up at like 6:30, 7-ish, depending. And then I'm just stupid until like 9:15. And then from
What do you mean, stupid?
I'm just not intelligent during that time.
You just can't function
There's just
properly.
nothing like if my brain is a German 12-cylinder engine, I'm running on like 5 cylinders for the first 2 hours of the day.
And that's when you go for your walk, and
that's it. I literally have to just like coax my
coffee.
brain into like being human, you know.
Yeah.
And then from like 10:30, there's just this logarithmic curve down into stupidity again.
Yeah.
And the only thing that like stops that from happening is when I'm playing a gig, or if I've had a couple of bevs. But I don't think that the stupidity stops with the bevs. I think the music's the only thing that keeps that thing going.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think, gonna ask then, so obviously, you grew up in South Africa, you had this childhood where you wasn't good academically.
Mm-hmm.
You said you struggled, you now know a bit more why that was, or you think you do. You obviously knew you were good at drums, you got to this boarding school, that's where you found yourself, you applied for Liverpool, ended up in Liverpool. What was the first, like, you know, say 2 or 3 months in, like, what was the biggest culture shock? Because you've come from South Africa. Was there one? Or was
Huge,
there a
man.
big, like, did at any point you think, like, I need to go home, you know, like, I can't be arsed with this?
Homesickness
Even though you were
was like
enjoying-
definitely a thing, for sure. But I think that like coming to Liverpool, when you're in Lippe, it's a very international place. So you kind of, there's like a different speed that happens there. But the more I got involved with the local crews and the local like people,
And bands.
of course, and venues and that kind of thing. Like I've spoken English my whole life. I thought I had a pretty good grasp on the language. And then coming here, like I don't know how true it is now because I've said it so many times, but I'm pretty sure it took me about 6 months to kind of get used to understanding the Scouse accent for one thing, but then like another 2 years to realize firstly how genuine most Scouse people are, and also how bloody hilarious they are. Because there's so many things that you guys say. Like the first time, I think I might have told you this, but like one of the first time I got hired for a professional session, it's by a guy called John Withnall. He works on Coldplay Records and stuff. And there was another guy called Phil Hartley. And this was at the time when the artist was new at that point, called Louis Berry. And this was his like demo sessions. And we had to record his whole album in 2 days, which was crazy. All the rhythm tracks. And John Withnall saw me playing at a jazz gig. This was end of second year. And afterwards, he came up to me. He's like, "You want to do a studio session?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course I want to do a studio session." And he's like, "Tomorrow?" And I was like, "Yes." And he's like, "I'll see you at 9 a.m. And I walked in, obviously cacking myself, because I was like,
You just agreed, you
yeah,
like,
what is this person? I didn't even know who he was at that point. And I walked into Par Street Studios and I was like, this place is insane. We're upstairs. And I walked in at 9 a.m. on the dot, and he was already there winding up cables, and looked at me and went, "Morning, helmet." And I was like, what the hell is a helmet? You know, and then you're working with more and more bands, you learn things like I was pushing an artist once too hard to do something, and he just looked at me and went, "You're the fucking shit house, you ate." And at that point I was like offended. I was like, why am I somebody's like latrine? This is not correct. Like, this is not right, you know? And then obviously realizing that there's so much compassion and there's so much like, it's so you get really nervous in this city when somebody is not rude isn't the right word, but like if somebody is not taking the piss a little bit,
it's weird.
It is weird. Yeah. Like if you walked in here once and didn't say something and you were just polite the whole way through the session, I wouldn't sleep for like 3 weeks. There's a lot of things, but like also just having to be really sharp with like your timing of jokes, because if you can't get a punchline in fast enough, there's gonna be one that's gonna be twice as fast and twice as good.
Yeah.
Right around the corner.
Scousers elite yet alive. Like,
oh my god!
Like, where you thinking I might get off?
Yeah, exactly. I haven't said anything for 45 minutes, and I can't even take a sip. I'm just like,
all these people are laughing at me. It's just like, why can't we just be friends and have a nice beer?
All the
and then they'll get off. Why did I get off there?
And all the comedians say that, don't they? Liverpool's one of the worst places to gig, because everyone who shows up is like, I'm funnier than him.
Yeah.
So like, and then if they don't make him laugh dead quick, he's like, why have I spent my money here? Like, I'll make myself laugh. So then, you said then so you got your first professional thing, job, second year into Lipper. So how then did you build on that and then obviously transfer that to becoming, obviously,
the cabin,
what it is now?
I started to do more studio sessions, and I started working with a band called TJ Murphy. John Whitnell kept hiring me for more and more stuff. And then I started to get hired by a guy called Chris Taylor, who now runs Kempston Street Studios, which is an amazing recording facility in the city. And then I was working with Tony Draper a lot as well. Him and I were producing things. I would say I was broadly producing. I think Tony was guiding me through the production process. He was definitely producing the records, but I was kind of like, maybe we should add a harmony.
Like what I do now with you. Stand behind you and then go like, should we do that? No.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Sam, yeah, and just completely ignore what you just said. I'm just going to do what I was going to do anyway.
But,
well, thanks for pitching it.
Yeah. Well, he does what he does and then goes, this is similar to what you recommended. Yeah. Like, then I go out to the lads and be like, I was using my ideas.
So Tony and Chris started hiring me more and more. I was gigging loads, doing lots of function work as well at this point, because you need to make money, you know. And then I failed my third year of university.
All right.
Shit.
So I failed a module called Professional Development, hosted by Matt Flynn. And the reason I failed was attendance, and I missed the deadline. And my attendance was bad in third year, not because I was hammered or out, but because I was working. And I would email the night before and the day of, early in the morning, hey, I'm in a studio session today with these people. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to come in. So I failed the professional development module. And on the last day of when you get all your results back and everything like that, Matt Flynn was there. I was the last person he was seeing that day because I was the only person who failed that year. And failing in Lipper, like, takes work. You need to work really hard to fail. He sat down and was like, all right, Al, let's go downstairs and have a pint and just have a chat. And I was like, shit. Doesn't matter how nice I am. This isn't going to go well, you know. And he basically let me know that I'd failed. And I felt really horrible because I definitely could have passed. If I just worked a bit harder, it would have been fine. And as I've gotten older, I'm like, it would be nice to have honors, not just a BA, you know, fine. It doesn't matter, of course. Nobody's ever asked me for a degree in my job, but I think that's like time does that, you know. But the interesting thing is, 3 years later, I get a phone call from Matt Flynn to go and talk at the University of Liverpool as a guest lecturer at their professional development thing. And
as someone who fails.
Yeah. And this year, which is 2023, I got asked to go to Lipper to talk to the first and second years about my experience. And Keith Mullen from the farm said, you need to come and, you know, host a lecture. And that was really cool because technically I'd failed, but at the same time I'd failed in the right way for the right reasons. I'd failed for the right reasons. And then I started to work with a guy from Texas called Texas Tim, and that's where my love for the blues started to go. So myself, Texas Tim, and Jesse Egan would go to the States once a year, and we'd go play and tour from Texas to Nashville and back, and play at all these like weird dive bars and stuff. And we got approached by a band called the Hummingbirds, who we have common friends within the Hummingbirds. Shout out to the Hummingbirds. I had amassed some recording gear at this point because I had an idea of having a rental business where I had this thing called a HOLLOWBODY, where if you wanted to record at your house, you just let us know and we'll drop off the fly case, show you how to use it, and then you can record it, and then when you're done, we'll pick it up. That didn't happen. Oops.
I dropped it off here and I never picked it up.
My brother came home from a night out and fell over a bunch of drum kit cases and some guitars in our living room. And he said to me, I think it's time to move somewhere else with this gear. You can stay here, but the gear's got to go, you know. And he was so patient with me, though. Like, he never forced it or anything like that. Yeah. And a couple months later, there was an opening at Elevator Recording. Elevator Rehearsal Studios on the corner of Jamaica and Parliament. And I moved all my gear in there. And Mick from the Hummingbirds said, hey, would you be up for recording the song called Way Into Your Heart? And I was like, yeah. Obviously. I know how to do that. This is going to be fine. So, you know, I immediately phoned Texas Tim and I was like, dude, what the hell do we even start? Like, how do I record country music? I don't even know what, like, okay, I can play it, but I don't know it. And he's like,
I only listen to Lady Gaga.
Yeah. And he's like, don't worry, man. I'll come down. I'll help you out, you know? So we started recording together, and that went well. Then there was a new band at the time called Mike Lowery, and they, I knew Julian Keel, or his name at the time was Esco Williams. That's his artist name. And they liked the way that I played in their stuff. And then they came in to record their first EP with us, called The Show, I think it was. And they got signed to Decca halfway through. And then they booked us for 6 months. And then Tim sat down. We used to have breakfast every morning in the restaurant, and he said to me, should we open a recording studio? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? Like, as if it was the most normal thing.
Was he older than you?
He's 1 year younger than me.
1 year younger?
Yeah. And but he was like, I think he's been 55 for the past, like, however old he is now. Yeah. He's just an amazing brain, you know. And we started working together, and we didn't know what to charge, didn't know anything. Tim got married. He wanted some more stability, so he left the studio. And then I recorded a guy called James Wyatt, who now runs Slow Flower Studios, amazing place. And then I recorded a guy called Lewis Fieldhouse. And this was the record that made me realize I want to do this, and I'm bloody serious about it. Lewis paid for the record by busking in London during the week, okay, on the South Bank. Then he would drive a Citroen Picasso from London to Liverpool. Yeah, absolutely.
Because our Picasso.
Love that. It's smooth.
Little velvet seats there, like a carpet pattern on the inside.
It's a pink wheel covered
Stereo missing because it's been nicked.
Yeah, exactly.
Roll down windows.
So he would drive up every weekend with the cash that he'd made, and he would make enough money during the week to pay for 2 studio days, maybe a third. And we would record, and we did this whole album over a series of weekends. I think it was like 5 or 6 like weekends. I did the whole thing, I mixed the whole thing, and it was a huge turning point because Tim wasn't with me in the studio. And at that point, Tim was playing all the guitars and doing all the programming, and I was in charge of engineering and mixing. And it was a nice way to split the load. And that's how we managed to get quite high quality stuff relatively easily. But on this record, I was like, I have to do everything now. And Lewis is an amazing guitarist, an amazing songwriter. The record's called Theodore Washington. And it's on Spotify, Lewis Fieldhouse. I actually listened to a thing because my assistant wanted to hear it now recently. The first thing I'd worked on that was like my own, you know. And it's a really emotional and beautiful record. And when we finished it and the masters came back, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. So I funded my adventure of running a recording studio by gigging shitloads. I would gig in Eric's Bar on Matthew Street. I would gig in the Cavern. I would gig at anybody's wedding.
To
I would
pay for your
play.
rent and that
Yeah,
of
just
the
to pay for
place.
the rent and to
Yeah.
pay for my house, to pay for food, for anything. And I was charging like £200 or $250 a song or something back then. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a joke basically. Like, you can't make any money off of that. I didn't know that. I just felt so valued for the fact that I was doing
People
it,
wanted
and
to
people
like,
wanted to do
The
it.
fact that
Yeah,
people have come up to you, you're like, that's kind of thing in itself.
Yeah.
Like, just thank you for choosing me, like, especially in the beginning.
Exactly, yeah. And that was kind of the thing. So after that, a few more records started to come in, you know, just like the odd call here, the odd call there, and business started to pick up. And I hated being in that building because I could tell when my neighbor Tom was getting a cold because his cough was changing pitch. That's how unsoundproof that place was. Like, I was like, oh, Tom's getting sick again. Like, and you'd get sick because the building was fluctuating in temperature like
No,
hell.
we used to there. It's
Horrible,
cold and
man.
damp, and it's damp.
Horrible. So that was it, and I spoke to the landlords. I was like, "Hey, can I get a second door?" They had built the place to have second doors, but they never installed them. And he was like, "I don't think that's gonna work, Alec." And I was like, "I will pay for the door on top of my £750 of rent. I will pay to put a door in if that's okay with you." And he's like, "No, I don't think it's gonna work, Alec." And I was like, "Mate, please, something, you know." And then we went to this festival in Berlin called the People Festival in this funk house, and I was like, "I want to move here. This is the place. I want to move to Berlin." And I get a phone call from a guy called Lee Mitchell, who was on tour at that time with Amanda Sings. And he said to me, "I'm opening up this rehearsal place, and I've heard that you're looking for a place to move." And there was a guy called Lee McMahon, who's now the front of house engineer for the 1975, who put us both in touch with each other because he knew my struggles in my studio and he knew what Lee needed to sort rehearsals. And it's the shortest phone call. I think it was the 6th of October, 2016. And I was on my balcony crapping myself because I knew that whatever the outcome of this phone call was going to determine whether I was going to be in Liverpool for the foreseeable or whether I was going to be basically stopping and just being a session drummer, and that's it. And he said, "I need you to pay me 5 years rent up front. I'll give you a very agreeable rate. That's how much is needed. And I need you to be a non-active director in the company so that we can get a business loan to build this place. That's the deal." And I said yes. The rent was very agreeable. That kind of happened, and then I moved in here, man. And
Here we are.
Here we are. It's been 6 years
I
now.
didn't know that. I have known Lee and Al for years. And I didn't know that that was how you did it. I thought Lee had opened it and you just was like, I don't know.
No, this is a
floated
custom
by.
build, man. This is exactly how
That's
I
why
wanted
you got it how you wanted it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I always wondered, like, how did he end up with the best room in the fucking place?
I didn't want anybody to be able to build on top of me. And I wanted as tall a ceiling as possible. So the logical solution was to have a vaulted roof.
That's so mad, man. So if so you're running out of options for an affordable place to open a studio, and if you basically were saying to yourself, if I can't get one soon, you know, I don't look professional, I haven't got my own place, the place I've got problems with, I need to just be a session player or do something else in music rather than produce.
The pressure was high, and like all good things in life, it's like you can try and plan your way out of it as best as possible, but something's going to come from left of field that's going to be better than anything, or it's going to change your trajectory so much that you couldn't have planned for it.
Yeah.
And I think at that time the pressure was so high that little nudge of Lee and I speaking on the phone for 5 minutes
It was enough.
and it changed the next like 10 years of my life, you know. And that I think is a really important thing to kind of keep in mind.
Yeah, it's one of them, innit? Like, so in life, you just got to be adaptable. It sounds mad, but like, it's like some things. Like for me, when I did my PhD, so I was working for a company. They paid my masters, and the idea was I was supposed to stay there for 2 years, like to work it back. And then a PhD just come up with the supervisor I was working with, and the good people, like they really know what they're doing. And I didn't expect it to come up because they were going, yeah, it's rare, we get this money. And they were just like, right, do it. So I was like, right, I've got to take the leap here. I might have to roll loads of money, but as you say, some things come up where you go, right, I've just got to take this now.
Yeah.
And it's that whole thing where that's something I learned. I was like, sometimes you just got to say yeah in it and just change the whole way and go for it.
So we get on to some AI talk. We need like a little a little intro here. Like, AI! Something like that.
Should we do that
We'll use
together?
that.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
AI! I can't sing on my own, but if you used to, I can.
That was quite cool. That.
I think that's going to be the soundbite for every time on every podcast.
AI! Hold on. But what was we talk about everyone? It was like sports science.
Sports science!
Okay, when we're finished, we'll do every topic. Most obscure. When we were talking about getting someone in from astroecology, you'd be like, astroecology! Right.
So we have found. So the reason, obviously, our two worlds overlapped in terms of the podcast originally is there are overlaps in terms of what we do and what you do, and in terms of using AI for many reasons to help. Well, I suppose instead of me trying to fill it in, how do you? So you've now taken on these AI tools to help improve. Is it workflow and stuff? So basically, the question I want to say is, how is AI? How are you using it to help either improve workflow, improve quality? Like, what are you using it for? Or, and more specifically as well, what type of tools are you using? So obviously we use like ChatGPT, but there's a plethora of things out there now that people probably want to hear about.
My first introduction to ChatGPT was my brother, and he said to me, should we write a song with a computer? And immediately every fiber in my body was like, get the fuck away from me. This is the worst idea. And also, I don't want the AI probe in that part of my brain. That's not cool, man.
Yeah.
You know? And we did. And initially, like everything, you need to learn how to interface with this thing and kind of understand how it likes to be asked questions. And you need to map your brain on how to get what is in your head out into a way that the machine can understand.
Yeah.
And there's parts of the thing where I didn't understand this at first, but like we've gotten really good at using Google. But if you look at my Google search, like what I type, it looks like my learning like difficulties are a lot more severe than they are, because it's like, man, wood post, big boat. Oh, it's Noah's Ark, obviously.
Yeah.
Like it's just, but like you know what words you're shooting for to make something come out, you know.
Because you've practiced for years.
For years and years and years. So the first time I was like, okay, let's write a song about somebody not giving up in the key of D. And my brother was like, okay, we can do that. So he typed that in. And it was like obviously pretty cheesy and kind of flat. And my brother was like, you need to think about how you would ask somebody in real life. If you were going to write a song about not giving up throughout a breakup, what are you going to do? The first thing you're going to do is be like, what do you enjoy listening to? Or like, what's the thing? So I said, what if we write it in the kind of way that Sting might write a song like this? And then it kind of spat out some lyrics. And then my brother, who had been using GPT at this point for quite some time, said, the verse feels a bit too cheesy. I think we need to kind of add a bit more angst to the verses and make the chorus feel like it has more of a relief. My brother and I are both very polite with AI. This winds Sam up big time. But I'm very kind to it because it does respond in kind, which is kind of cool, I think. Once we kind of got to that stage where I saw how my brother was interacting with the machine and being like, no, more like this. And then like these chords, because we then pulled out his guitar and we were working through this, and I was like, these chords feel a bit too static. And then my brother said, oh, can we influence the chord changes to be more like a Jack Johnson chord change? And the lyrics started to change with the chords as well. And then we're like, okay, cool, we really like this one. Let's try to do one in a completely Bruno Major direction. Same concept, but just do it like Bruno Major. Dude, the chords that came out, everything like shifted instantly. And at that moment, I realized I felt like the teacher that I used to have that said, you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket your whole life.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have a calculator in my pocket. I've got something I can book flights on, and I can talk to like amazing people, or I can phone my grandmother, who I only ever see her forehead, of course, when you talk on FaceTime. But like, you know what I mean? Like, there's these things that to me now are so normal. The fact that I can lie in bed and the first thing I can see is, what's the weather like? These people from around the world that have seen a video you've put up, this is their input on it. You can track the whole metric of this whole thing. Plus, you can also see your entire financial life and all these things. And at that moment, when it changed everything to Bruno Major, and of course it's not like great, but you can edit it and you can work with it. You can grind things down. I realized like, oh, this is probably what that teacher with the calculator could never have predicted. That I have this phone. Now there's this thing that I need to now retrain my brain to learn how to use this thing.
Yeah.
The irony is that after having gotten into it more, my songwriting has gotten better because of how iterative it is, right? So there's a certain amount of fuel that we have in our creative brains. When Sam and I write together, we need to have a break in the middle of the session because you just need a little bit of a moment to regroup. What's fascinating about AI is if I have a verse and a chorus, the worst thing to write in every song is verse 2. It just sucks. Or you write a great verse 2 and then you have to redo verse 1, which then makes writing the bridge like you're climbing 1,000 stairs. You know, there's only like 24 lines in a song and it feels like it's like you're pulling water from a rock. If I put in a verse that I've written, a chorus that I've written, the hypothesis of the song, this is what not the hypothesis, the thesis of the song. This is what I'm writing about. This is what's difficult. And this verse, I want to get this right. The rhyme scheme is A, B, B, A. These are the chords. The song's in 4/4. Can you give me something here? And what's fascinating is that I'm not looking for a whole verse. I'm looking for the one line.
Yeah.
I'm looking for one line. When we stumble on a good line, a good line can sometimes change the entire efficiency of an entire song. It can change the pace. It
rebuilds the section.
Man. And you might look at that line and go, well, that's just made this first verse shit.
Yeah.
And you rebuild it.
Yeah.
And what's cool is that you can take that first verse that you have written and say, can you give me a couple of options on this verse that I have written? And it will talk to you about it. And you can also type in your song and go, I want to make this a bit edgier. Can you give me some options? I don't agree with people that are writing songs with AI where they're not engaging in a debate. And the debate is not between you and the machine. The debate is between you and your creativity. Mm-hmm. How far are you willing to push this?
And it's the medium of the AI which is allowing that to take place.
Exactly. As computers get stronger, graphics on games got better. But us who played the games got better at playing games too. And I think that we can take a similar approach to the way that we think about AI in the creative world in that sense. There are people who are going to fight, but there were people who were fighting when Auto-Tune came out. There's people who are fighting on how, when I use Logic on a day-to-day basis here, Logic Pro, the DAW, the recording software, that's not real. What you hear coming out of speakers, you've seen me edit. What actually is recorded versus what actually is being heard.
Totally different.
Two totally different things.
Yeah, no.
Every now and then you might find a band or an artist that doesn't require that. That is a gifted person, just like there are gifted songwriters out there who are fantastic. And from that sense, GPT is amazing because writer's block is no longer an excuse. Provided you get off your ass, you pick up a guitar, and you've done some of the work, you will be able to, if you're open to it, you will be able to push into a nice position. The other way that I use it is for my YouTube channel. There's a lot of parts about the YouTube world that is very difficult to do by yourself. I write the music by myself or I co-write with somebody. I then play all the instruments, I film everything, I edit everything by myself, and then upload it. What's been so interesting now is to be able to take a video that is in its raw format, and I upload the introduction, the description of the product and what it does, plus my review of the product without the music in the middle, and I sync up the audio to the video, and I upload it to a service called Gling, which is an AI powered editing software, where it takes out all awkward pauses, ums and stuff, plus it picks the best take. This is going to change your life.
Let me grab a notepad.
Don't worry, we can talk about it afterwards. My cousin put me onto it, and he was like, this might be useful for you. And to get a video from putting the stuff on my computer to first cut without the music took like 3 hours. because you are kind of going through everything manually and you're looking through it. Does it feel right? Does it not feel right? Is the timing on this right? Yeah, it's like 2 minutes. It's like it just works through.
Well,
this
it just
whole
removes
thing.
all awkward pauses, all stagnations that you don't want.
Plus, if I repeat a line, like let's say the API 550A EQ is a 3-band. Oh wait, let me go for that again. The API 550A EQ. The API 550A EQ is a 3-band equalizer with shelves and a mid-band section. It will pick up which one of those lines was the best one that you said, put it together so that it makes grammatical sense, and it's done for you.
It doesn't feel mashed up at the end.
It does. But it gives you the starting point.
So you're, like the songwriting, you're using it as the tool.
Yeah.
So it gets rid of the mundane shit where you can almost do it with a podcast on and you're just like,
Exactly. Yeah. Stuff that I do with my eyes a lot of the time, it just does. Sometimes, I mean, it doesn't get it right all the time. That has been a huge thing. But then I can take the SRT file, which is the subtitle file, and I can put that into a converter, which then makes it into text. Gling, I spoke to the CEO of Gling. He's going to make a text export. I can then take the text, what I have said on this video, put that into GPT, and then say, hey, and I've now trained my YouTube GPT chat, where I just put the text in, and then it gives me a short description for the video, a long description for the video, as well as 4 titles and 4 options on words for the thumbnail. Because I've worked with it and I've trained it and literally spoken to it and be like, this is what I like.
You can
this
keep
is
your
how I
little
go.
own like window open.
Exactly.
Your own like personal.
Which is fantastic. So now the thing that takes forever is to get a good title on a video.
Yeah.
And like to get the thumbnail text right is really difficult.
That's what I struggle with, is making thumbnails. That is, because it's a horrendous job.
Think about it from the other side. If you start training your specific chat, here's all of my videos. Like let's say Mr. Beast has got however many 100 videos and it learns all those titles and the descriptions of each of these things. And then for it to say, I need some ideas. Of course, they have their think tanks. And initially it's going to be bad, right? Like it's not going to be awesome. But you're looking for the thing that starts the spark of that conversation of like, you know, I've delivered 100 roses. Not so great. I wanted to buy 10,000 roses to give to every woman in this thing. Slightly better, but not so good. But if you put that in a think tank of people within that one genre, it's going to be nuts. It's going to work like hell on
Because
fire.
you started it with the correct initial conditions.
That's
to
it.
get the optimum output.
That's it.
Yeah.
The other thing I use GPT for is I use it in conjunction with Midjourney. And you've...
I've seen this
yeah.
option.
So this is really cool. So to create cover art, for example, if you use a designer, to get iterations on something takes a lot of time. In any case, like if there's mix recalls, it takes time because you're working around somebody else's schedule, you're working around their deadlines and all these things, and it's really difficult to kind of get something quickly.
Mm-hmm.
With AI, my brother and I taught this chat in GPT. We went onto a bunch of websites. My brother wrote a piece of code for it to be able to read, well, he told GPT to write a piece of code for it to read what is important about how to get a good prompt on Midjourney. And he trained it to go through these websites. And he trolled it, and it became a really powerful piece of kit. And now I type in, for example, the Honey Motel, shout out once again, I'm sure for the 5,000th time.
Yeah.
I said 4 manatees playing cards was the first thing. No, the first thing I wrote was a manatee surfing on the Milky Way. And it was insane. The first thing that came out was absolutely nuts. And then I was like, oh, it would be quite interesting to see 4 manatees playing cards.
Like that picture with is it the dogs?
The
Like,
manatees. People are going to be so confused.
Dogs. Is that old famous painting?
Yes,
isn't it, with the
yeah,
dogs?
yeah,
sorry, you're on about
yeah.
Maybe. But I was sat in my apartment, in my pants at like 10 a.m., at like 10 p.m. at night. You guys were in rehearsal, I think, or something weird.
Me, Lou, and Jack were having a drink somewhere.
Yeah. I was doing these things and then getting different options, and I was like, oh, 4 manatees in a disco or whatever. And I was like, to try and describe this to another human, firstly, they'd be concerned for my health. They'd be like, are you okay? Do you need to see somebody? Are you all right? You know? The next thing is like, the fact that I went through a bunch of iterations and then was able to knock up a really solid piece of album art, which I think looks sick.
It's fucking sweet, yeah.
And the whole process was what, maybe 30 minutes? With iterations.
From when you first messaged me, it was to the end, it took 30 minutes.
In my apartment, there's two AIs talking to each other there. This is fantastic. One is prompting the other, and the other is interpreting that prompt. I then react and inform GPT to say, this is what I don't like about what Midjourney's doing. Can we try and emphasize X, Y, and Z? That then gets implemented again. And it's this beautiful feeling of pure creativity without the boundaries or the pushback. If I want to do something creatively in here, I have to arrive here, I have to plug stuff in, I then have to remember the idea I had in the shower, I then have to tune the guitar, I then have to make sure the computer's on, the right hard drive is in, not the corruption, and then I have to do everything correct, and then I can start.
So it's removing those kind of artificial human barriers, which really limit the the creative process, because as you say, it's start one thing, right, then I've got to do 100 things before I can do this other thing. Mm-hmm. Whereas you get this back and forth. And as I kind of find as well, when you do things quickly, you get more into it, so you'll get it done even quicker than if you were trying to do it elsewhere, because it's sparking things all the time.
And what you've just said, Dan, I've never thought about it like that, and you don't even think about it the way Alice just said, if you were involved in the arts. But you can even apply it to writing a script for I don't know, a cluster algorithm, whatever you're doing. You said when you're speaking to HOLLOWBODY or GPT, there's no judgment about what you're asking.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've never thought about it like that. If you get that artwork you created for Motel, if you were trying to do that with Ryan, and Ryan's a designer, and you're trying to speak to Ryan over the phone, he judges it.
Exactly.
You've got to you're putting the weird instructions in. No one's saying that's not gonna work.
Yeah.
He's got to understand it. ChatGPT's not emotional.
Yes.
It's just taking it and going, I'll do my best to put these things in place.
Because as you say,
that's so weird. I thought about it's not judging you.
Because if you spoke to me and said that, I'd be like, not really fucking into this.
Or it'll come out how you think about it.
Yeah.
That doesn't think about it in any way. Well, it does, but it thinks about it based on a lot of data, rather than if you ask me as a designer, I've got a set amount of ideas, and that's one of the barriers when you songwrite or create.
Yeah.
It's different ideas. Whereas if your client was a robot that could just spit stuff back at you, it's weird. That
you also have your personal bias, plus the external personal bias. ChatGPT doesn't have any issues with confidence or imposter syndrome, and there's the two most powerful things that we have in the creative world is objectivity. So at high speed, like you were talking about, the thing that remains high is objectivity, because you don't have a chance to get attached to something.
Yeah.
You remain relatively objective the whole way through, because also there's no conversation in between things. It's a very one-sided conversation of your own thing being interpreted by something else.
You see it. Oh,
exactly.
No, slightly wrong, slightly wrong. That.
That's it.
Yeah.
And then if you remove your confidence bias, whether you've had a crap month, week, year, your imposter syndrome gauge where you're at that moment, that can really affect it. So I've had moments where I've written something in here and I've shelved it, and I've gone, I will never hear that again. And then maybe I do 6 months later, I'm like, oh, actually, that's not so bad, that. Side note, that's why I release so much stuff on YouTube with new songs, because I'm like, maybe it will be good in 6 months. I don't know. Maybe right now it's not, or maybe it's the inverse, But that to me is one of the most powerful things about all of this, is we're untethering so many of the natural barriers, the gooey meat barriers that we have in our heads, emotional barriers and all this stuff, and we're able to just nail it right down really fast by using these tools. Mm-hmm. I think that there's a large amount of caution to be done with that. I think you need to be able to moderate for sure. But at the same time, with things like Splice, which I don't know, have you ever heard of Splice before? Yeah. This is a sampling software where people upload small snippets or loops of stuff, and people make entire records with this thing. So to me, GPT has the potential of being the Splice of lyrics.
Yeah.
So you've never seen me open Splice in here. I'd rather make our own sample of a light switch or a weird snare in a warehouse or whatever. that's my bias working against me in that moment. Because it would likely objectively be better if I went onto Splice, found the thing faster, we can keep this process going. But because of my ego and because of how I think about things and what excites me, I want to plug a guitar into an old tape machine that does this weird thing, that does this thing. In the meantime,
the mix.
in the meantime, the bass player's asleep in the room. And it's like, what are you doing kind of thing.
I suppose what that approach does keep or manages to keep is like the authenticity of actually making music. Whereas, as you say, because you are running the barrier, well, by using AI and many things, of losing that like homemade, this is a person made it. As you
Perhaps.
say, so it could be.
And at the moment as well, there's people now who you can see when you've used the GPT, and like you can see on like a bio if someone's pasted. So that's what you're saying. You can't overuse it because people will get onto you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think that there is a really interesting thing that's going to be happening now. At least, again, this is early doors, I guess. But like, there's so many sectors that are going to be amazingly influenced by this. And for creatives that are in a position where they are not in a performing space, then sure, I think you can probably get away with it for as long as you want to. But what is going to be very interesting is that I think we might see a renaissance of the live music scene, and in service, and in plays, and stuff that is things to be performed, or things where service is required. I was having this conversation with a friend of mine yesterday where we were having dinner, and we were talking about some American restaurants have iPads on the tables. And what I find interesting is that in a restaurant that does that, the food comes to you quicker. There's no mistakes on your orders, and you pay at the table and you leave. And in every markable sense, it's a better experience, right? But you have a worse time at the restaurant.
Oh my God.
And it's crazy, isn't it? Because as you say, when the waiter will come over, smile. What would you like? You have a bit of joking back and forth. They bring the food over, and sometimes like this is gonna sound mad, but like when stuff goes wrong at a restaurant, doesn't it feel boss when you ask for something fixed and they fix it for you?
Yeah,
like,
and then afterwards they maybe give you a little something.
Yeah.
There's that instant gratification in real time from another person.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's interesting to me now, is that if we can somehow use these tools together, if there's a way to enhance the raw material, sure. But there's gonna be moments, now it might already be happening, where there could be songs co-written with AI that are being performed live by squidgy human beings. Like, is that not the coolest thing in the world? Is that not the next step in evolution? We are running 21st century things up here in Stone Age hardware. So at some point, we're going to need to take the next step. That's not going to happen physically, right? But I think from a creative point, we might be able to turbocharge some of the things. But at the end of the day, it's at this point anyway, perhaps in the future it might change. But that moment of seeing somebody in a subway with a guitar that's playing a song they've written, or is even a cover of another song, and you see this person delivering a performance of a lifetime, that will only happen that once, at that moment, right then, when there were no trains, at that moment. That will be the same forever. And it has been the same forever, because we still have classic music. We still have traditional folk songs in South Africa, folk songs that have been around for thousands of years. We have Macs. We have amazing computers. We have Facebook, and we have whatever the hell else. Those songs still kick ass today. And that's the human thing. Now we're at a point where we can kind of introduce these higher order thinking of more objective, more powerful, more potent creativity. But the human element is the thing that's going to make it really special.
Yeah.
I think that's where I kind of sit on it now.
The restaurant reference, that's just actually blew me out, that, because iPads started coming into the establishments, especially franchises, but the whole restaurant experience isn't about, like, if me and you went for this guy, it's not about, like, what are you doing on your iPad, and then we ignore each other. We appreciate, like, we're going, because we want to have a convo, we'll get some scran.
I find it fascinating. I really do. And it's kind of beautiful to see, you know, in the car world. One of the things I'm as passionate about music is cars, and whenever you look at hypercars and these kinds of things, you start to notice things that are potentially coming, you know. And what's interesting is that obviously electric cars are the future, but a lot of hypercars now, at least concepts of them, have got fake manual transmissions, so that you have to be more engaged with the car, because manual cars are becoming more valuable now. If they're like nice manual cars, not like crappy Mazda, you know, not that.
Not a Ford Fiesta
Yeah,
from 98.
exactly. Yeah, like
I'd love
you
a
know.
19 Fiesta anyway.
But like,
Cool.
it's that thing where it's a fully electric idea. I think it's Toyota that's coming up with this. Like they're like the next Lexus LFA thing.
Yeah.
Is it going to be fully electric, but it's going to have a gearbox that you can put in automatic, and the car will drive fully automatically fine. But you can put it in manual, so that when you're going around the bends and you want to feel the car a bit more, you'll be able to stall the car. It will map itself properly to be able to do it. It's all synthesized,
Crazy.
but it feels real. And Koenigsegg was the first people to do this in their new car. So I think that the same thing is already happening with music, where we had this whole push through the like 2010s of like super heavily regulated, gridded music to hell, not too many real instruments, this kind of things. And now bands are coming in. And then when I go to a jazz night, usually, like when I first moved here in 2010, to bring it back to that, the average age was like 40 plus. Now, there's like a bunch of like 18, 19-year-olds who are ripping it up.
A good mate of mine as well. He loves jazz nights. He's
Yeah.
always there. Like as you say, the age is coming down because
Yeah.
people are craving this.
It's the most real thing you're going to find.
Yeah.
And it's not just jazz nights. There's like open mic nights. There's all these kinds of things. But that really super intimate thing, I think, is what people are craving more and more. As we're on our phones, like, I don't know, like I'm basically in front of a screen at some point for about 12 to 13 hours a day, which is a lot. So these really intense performance moments, that's the thing. So, and that's what we crave.
Before we get into the wrap up and the questions, the thing on the music, which is just a metaphor for everything, music was gridded in the 10s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then all the bedroom pop artists, and like, it's all loose and jangly and like not on the grid again, and like the bands are loose again. And but then think about like 2012 Coldplay, and it was almost like, wasn't band music.
It was
like,
dance. It was dance music.
It just left into it because they wanted to do it,
Yeah.
but
Like the resurgence of the guitar music
yeah, but
is back.
what
I
a
think
convo, man. Yeah,
it has. It's been. I think just before we get into our final questions, your YouTube channel. So
Yeah.
You've mentioned it a few times. Let's plug it. Let's talk about it. A little overview. So what is it you do on YouTube?
At the moment, I review pieces of equipment in this room most of the time, but I also walk around and talk about it. I will also be distributing my music through that medium, which is quite exciting. The main thing is kind of just giving people a unique way of experiencing a piece of equipment that isn't really done anywhere on the web. Usually when people do demonstrations, it's quite dry and perhaps very mechanical.
Yeah, it's very, this does this thing, this is how well it does this thing.
Yes.
End of review.
Exactly. Whereas I'm definitely, I guess it's the Mediterranean in me, I get a bit emotional and make bad jokes and like do that kind of thing. But the whole thing is based around music as opposed to, it's basically music where the piece of equipment's the main character. And I picked it, the whole thing happened during COVID because there was nothing else happening. And the guy who dropped off the gear off camera earlier during COVID said, "We can't get this gear to anybody. Can you do a review?" And I said, yes. And I wrote a song with the piece of equipment and it worked. And the manufacturer was happy. The people who gave me the piece of gear were happy. And then they just said, do 10 more of these. And then once you're done with that, do 10 more. And they've been very supportive. So now that's kind of the thing. And it's growing into its own independent part of my life. And if you want to check it out, if you are interested in anything musical, or if you just like music, I can happily say, even if you're not into gear, Sam is not into gear, but he watches the music.
Yeah,
he
don't
watches
watch
the
it for the
videos.
gear. I've always seen that too. I'm like, oh, fuck knows what you reviewed, lad, but that's always sweet, man. Like, lads, that humour's sweet. Did you see the gear? It wasn't ass.
No, it wasn't asked. So
So you can come for either thing if you're
Yeah,
into
yeah.
What's it called?
Yeah.
What's it called, the channel?
Alec Brits.
Alec Brits.
Nice
That's
and
it.
easy.
Straight
and we'll
in.
leave a link in the description as well.
Please do.
Um,
Like and subscribe. Also, give this podcast a review
Yes.
on any medium you are listening to.
Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for your time. Very
Absolute pleasure.
That's one of, again, up there with one of the most interesting conversations. It's like left field. It's what we normally talk about.
Yeah,
It was just great. Loved it. If you like it, like it. If you don't like it, you know where that button is. But we also hate you. So
An interesting approach. I like that.
you've got to call them out. If you want to tell us, tell us. But you
Fucking shit ass at the lollies.
You see?
are a dickhead. So we always end with the YouTube section of the podcast with Sam's favourite question, or famous question, should I say? To take it away, Sam.
This is my question, lad. You probably expect this. I've probably asked them before. Right, Al, you're going to die tomorrow. You're on your deathbed tomorrow, lad. You've been shot. You're dead. You got disease, dead. Someone turns up, the great prophecy, and he says, Al, before you die, you can know one thing that we currently don't know. Could be personal. It might be a big thing. What is the one thing you want to know before you die that might put you at peace? Could be personal. Did this person ever love me? Did this thing ever happen? It could be, is the aliens? Is there a God? Where am I going? What would you want to know?
How do we fix this? And by this, I mean the feeling of everything falling apart right now.
The way society is just kind of, everything seems to be going wrong.
It just feels like there is the hand of chaos in everything. Is there a way to fix this without it resulting in war?
Yeah.
That would be what I want to know.
Belter. I like it.
So is the destruction and before what's the path look like in the next? Is it
Just
fixable?
something. Is it fixable?
Yeah.
Do we need a hard reset? Is that the only way? Because it's exhausting.
Give me anxiety, lad.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
It's exhausting.
That's the deepest answer I've ever had. And then Dr. Ian Jarmo said, did me girlfriend when I was 18 cheat on me with me best mates.
We've had all sorts. It's class.
Right.
But yeah, so for everyone still watching on YouTube, as we said, it's been a pleasure, and we'll see you in the next one.
Ta-da.